2 Peter 3:15 says, "But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect." The Greek word that is translated "make a defense" is apologia, and it's the same word from which we derive our term apologetics. The Apostle Paul also uses the same word several times as he's called to provide a legal defense for why he believes what he believes. We use this word today to mean providing a reasoned argument for the Christian faith. As we prepare to do ministry amongst the lost people of Utah, we can study the way that Christians, both in the New Testament and throughout Christian history, have employed apologetics in order to learn from their methods and hopefully do it better in our context today. The Bible provides many examples of how the early Christians proclaimed the gospel generally, and in particular, how they made a defense of their faith. As we already saw, Peter said that our defense should be done with gentleness and respect. In 2 Timothy 2:24 and 25, we're told that we should be kind and patient, and that we should correct our opponents with gentleness. We should be gentle and respectful in the way that we deal with our Mormon neighbors. This is particularly useful for us to consider regarding the Utah context. The Mormon people are, quite simply, very thin-skinned when it comes to talking about matters of faith. The kind of argument one might employ outside of Utah to explain something about the Christian faith might even be received, intellectually acknowledged by people, but it is very common that here in Utah, when we proclaim something true about Christianity, that our Mormon audience might take that as an attack on their own faith. It is very difficult for Christians today to say true things about Christianity that undermine Mormonism without it being taken as an attack. It's critical for us to be gentle and respectful in the way that we deal with these types of things with our Mormon context. In the book of Acts alone, 11 times, Christians are either encouraged in or said to have exemplified boldness in public defense of the gospel. Boldness. We are encouraged by the Word of God to be bold. While we're to be gentle and respectful, it is fully appropriate and even expected that we would have a clear conscience about what we talk about, that we'd be able to give a clear defense of it, be bold, not to be ashamed of what it is that we believe. Mormonism is one of those religions that is known as a bold religion. 60,000 plus missionaries are sent out around the world in pairs, on bikes, and in different parts of the world, different countries, that they would knock on doors of strangers to share their faith. That is a bold approach. Many times in Utah, when we've done similar things to reach out to strangers, the response has been shock that anyone would be as bold as the Mormon Church in declaring what they believe. Boldness is fully appropriate and expected as we utilize apologetics in our modern context. Again, in the book of Acts, 9 times the Apostle Paul is said to have reasoned with people as he proclaimed the gospel. 7 times Paul sought to persuade or convince people to put their faith in Jesus. The book of Acts also uses words like explaining and proving that Jesus was who he said he was and that he rose from the dead. It is biblically appropriate for us to do more than just proclaim the gospel. Proclamation of the gospel and a defense of it are not synonyms, but are both to be utilized in the way that we interact with those we're reaching in our own cultural context. As Christians, we are instructed to always be prepared to make a defense for the gospel. And we should expect that our defense of the faith would look similar to these Bible examples. Throughout church history, Christians have further developed different apologetic methods: classical apologetics, evidentialism, presuppositionalism, even philosophical apologetics, and more. But all of these refer to ways that Christians have employed reasoned arguments in making a defense of the Christian faith. Furthermore, specific arguments have been produced and refined to answer particular objections. The cosmological argument, the moral argument, the ontological argument, and so on. These methods and arguments have been fine-tuned to deal with the specific issues of a particular people. For those of us who are doing ministry in Utah, we can learn from these historical examples, by being students of the culture around us and seeking to deal with the most common specific objections that are unique to this landscape. It is a common experience for those who are well prepared to make a defense of their faith to those outside of Utah to struggle doing the same thing inside of Utah. The kind of objections we get here are flavored by Mormonism. We have to deal with those things differently than in many other places. As you minister here, you will very likely find that this is a unique place for many reasons, and that many of the objections to the Christian faith common in other places take on a rather different form than they might outside of this state. We owe it to the lost people of Utah, as well as our brothers and sisters around the world who have a heart for Mormon people, to become proficient in dealing with the unique issues of Mormonism. It could be said that there is a dual purpose for apologetics, a dual set of benefits. It can serve both those inside the church and those outside the church. And perhaps it's helpful to think of these things as two distinct benefits that overlap. This is what the next two sessions are going to be about.